Okay, we're going to be doing something a little bit different on this one. A little bit different than the other stuff that I normally put out, which is all different things that people can potentially do in and around delivery to make things a little bit easier. Today, we're going to be walking through a proposition pack that I've put together. So there's a few slides I'm going to walk through, and you can see how the different aspects of what I talk around with the H.U.M.A.N framework links in to the actual delivery itself. What I'm kind of realising at the minute is I'm talking a lot about the what, but I'm not actually talking about the how. So today we're going to change it, and I'm going to try and do this after a long day of work with a bit of energy to make this a little bit entertaining so that the message gets driven home. Okay, so if you're with me, let's go. The whole tagline of what I've tried to put together is we are all about structured delivery, driving it through people, and that's how it links back to the H.U.M.A.N framework, right? That's what it's all about. But the reason why I started down this journey was around some of the problems and issues that I was seeing day to day via work with clients. And it comes back to those two things really that I've spoke about at length before, which has been that delivery carries the burden of a lot of things upstream, as well as gaps that are seen within the interactions between people. And all of that means that delivery becomes a bit clunky, and it ends up costing you a lot more than you actually realise it is. And that the traditional frameworks tend to hide these losses because it's not something that they're actively looking into. But the core message here is that if you are solving problems in delivery, if delivery is weighted heavier than the work that's been done upstream, you are paying a premium for that delivery, and it's all in unseen. So a little bit about us and a little bit about how we stabilise these delivery outcomes, and that is all basically back to the H.U.M.A.N framework. And the framework is focused on making delivery a lot simpler, and I use the word a lot more boring. You want delivery to be boring, but boring, and not by removing any structure. What we want to do is make it work for people, and often that comes from laying some additional bits and pieces on top of what you've already got, but in turn that simplifies the process that we're trying to put into place. And some of the traditional process gaps that you tend to see is misalignment between stakeholders and teams, often because of a lack of communication or a lack of the work done up on the left, upstream of delivery. Ceremonies and artifacts is that are just checkboxes. We're not getting out of them the actual value that we need to see by asking what I highlight are different questions than what people normally ask. You also see silent blockers caused by poor communication as well, things that are not identified and not mitigated through the fact that they just kind of slip underneath the radar. Low motivation and team fatigue, and that comes back to a lot of the stuff that I talk about week in, week out, and how things impact teams and how that has a knock-on effect as well, indirectly and in unforeseen ways. And the deliveries that technically sound but contextually off. So the solution that might be picked on the left might be the right solution, but because of environmental issues, and by environmental I mean environmental within the organisation, the solution actually needs to be readdressed to suit that. It could be, for example, that a solution's been picked, but you don't necessarily have the right skill set in-house to solve that problem. And that's what we're a lot about, which is understanding the solution, but also understanding the context too. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about more and more as time goes on is the actual service offering itself here at ProjIQ, which is the three areas that is on screen at the moment. You have project discovery, project execution, and project rescue. And I'm going to go into those a little bit more detail as this presentation goes on. But here's a couple of taglines around these particular items. Project discovery is a discovery in itself. There's a project and we need to know a little bit more before we actually commit and make decisions around forwarding that into actual executables. But what we want to do is put a lot of focus on the left on shared understanding and early alignment, and that will enable informed decisions that may not have come. I'm going to skip execution for a second. I'm going to jump to project rescue, because that project rescue is very much around re-establishing the direction and confidence for a project. A project might be being hindered by something, decisions not being made for various reasons, the solution might be wrong, and obviously confidence starts to drop. But it's a foot on the ball moment to go, right, are we doing the right thing? And in a short amount of time, trying to figure out, is this still the right path forward, or do we need to reassess and readjust? And then rebuild the engagement around that delivery and repurpose it for a successful delivery. And then back to execution is actually the execution of the delivery of either discovery or rescue, or of a normal project that might not be in either of those phases. Embedding momentum through clear roles, making sure clarity is there for everybody that's involved in the delivery, and also making sure that there's real core collaboration with the people that will be getting the project delivered. And the key part is building trust and ownership around that delivery, our delivery model. So this is a little bit more about H.U.M.A.N. I've spoke about it a lot at length, and this kind of goes into it a little bit more detail. And at first, what I'm trying to show here is how it breaks down, and I can give a bit more of an explanation that I've probably not given on other videos. So you see it broken down there. So you've got the first step, which is here in a line, establishing a foundation and a vision for a project. How that needs to be interpreted is that discovery section. It is making sure we've got the right requirements, we've got the right capability in-house that's ready to do the delivery, establishing some initial risks, and coming up with a view of, do we have the right path forward? Do we have the right detail to inform the decisions to make commitment for delivery? And then you're into the actual flow of building the project up after that. You have understand an architect, design optimal solutions. So you are going to get those requirements built upon. We will be looking at architecture here and solution designs, understanding the core underpinnings between the different aspects of the technical architecture within the company or client. And then we've got map and mobilize, which is creating an execution roadmap and plan. What I will say about this section is there's time that's spent here to make sure that we do have the right resources in play ready to do this delivery when we're at this point, because what we need to be making sure is that we're ready to, in a short amount of time, execute. We don't want to be getting to a point of actually starting to do code and then actually spotting that we have an area that we haven't thought about, and we end up having to think about drafting in other people. Assess and analyze. This is all about monitoring KPIs and performance. Dashboards and getting all those kind of bits and pieces set up so that once we are into the flow of delivery, we're creating that transparent layer to make sure that everybody's aware of how we're progressing. But the key point for this is making sure that these are dashboards that work for the team, that don't impede the team from delivery. It actually supports delivery and supports decision making around the project to make sure we're maintaining positive forward momentum. And then you've got navigate and deliver, which is delivery. That's the execution of the delivery, but making sure that the foundations of delivery continue to be people-centered. Here's it broken down into a little bit more detail. So you can see at the top there, you've got all the different sections, and then you have underneath that kind of a core value of what we're trying to achieve within those sections. And then below that, you can see, again, the overall direction of where we're trying to push the team. So in here in a line, it's all about requirements clarity. In Understand an Architect, it's all about making sure that we're making the right technical decisions, and it goes on and on and on until you get to delivery, where it's all about team delivery excellence. The whole point of why I did this was to start to answer some really, really key questions around the different sections of delivery, and understanding the problems that I saw in delivery and trying to figure out what it meant to the different stages of a delivery process. So you can see there under H, here in a line, that should all be about understanding what voices and needs must be heard, recorded, and on top of that, which indicators will provide shared purpose and vision for success. Under U, the Understand an Architect, that is all about understanding what solution is going to reduce friction and create real business value for users. But also, if we're in a position where we are needing to make decisions, it's all about understanding trade-offs and making sure that they get to the right people for decisions and that it's transparent across the board. From an M perspective, map and mobilize, we are looking at stakeholders' awareness of what success looks like. Who owns what, and the true delivery capacity. Sometimes decisions are made upstream about a delivery without taking into context the actual capability that you've got within the team, and how actually the teams will deliver that solution as well, and what steps they will go to. And that could be as core as how the environmental structure will work for them. But also, again, how we will evidence the readiness and ownership at the end of that stage to make sure that we can give the thumbs up that we're ready to progress forwards. From an A perspective, assess and analyse, this is all about the human delivery signals. What are they telling us and what must change for success? And what I like to use in elements like this, and there's a toolkit that goes along with this, is asking human-centered questions around the team or the users. Within one of the examples I use is around a risk register. Everybody understands what a risk register is, right? But no one ever asks when we're looking at a risk, okay, that's a risk and we've got a mitigation and an owner. But do we understand how that risk will ultimately impact the user? Is it an internal high value priority risk for one reason or another, which doesn't really impact a user? Or is the opposite true? But also as well, understanding if we get a mitigation, what's the team's confidence rating of that mitigation that it will solve that problem? And these are how I like to frame some questions really when we're actually breaking down the delivery process at large. From an end perspective, it's all about how do we sustain trust while we're delivering measurable value. And it's trust up and down. It's not just trust up to stakeholders, it's also trust downstream in the delivery with the team as well. So decision gates, again, like there's always been a fallacy that agile means you just can kind of, paperwork's non-existent and governance is non-existent, and none of that is actually true. The key thing to understand with agile is that governance is still very much a thing and it needs to be considered, and this is true also within what I'm trying to implement within clients with the H.U.M.A.N framework too. And what this is here about is breaking it down and understanding how do you get from the left hand side across to the right. So if you're moving from H to U, realistically, you've got to have a stakeholder sign off on the scope and actual vision of the delivery itself. You've really got to have that success criteria defined and agreed to. And any constraints and assumptions are documented and they're aware, and they will ultimately turn into risks as you go through the process. From U to M, you need to make sure that the technical solution is validated and given the thumbs up across the board too. That the integration approach is also considered. We're living in a time with software where it's not just delivering an application onto a laptop. You have to be aware of API connections. You have to be aware of data flows. Not many software deliveries can get away with that these days. It has to be thought about and it has to be confirmed that there's an approach for that too. And making sure that any decisions are fully approved from the right bodies. When you move from M to A, the team are basically assembled and ready. Plans are approved and baselined and ready to go. But you've also got that quality methodology too. And what do I mean by that? Well, we need to be making sure that testing's thought about. How are we going to make sure that the deliverables are going to be in a test-ready state? And how are we going to provide evidence that these have been tested to a satisfactory level? And then A to N, this is all about making sure that monitoring systems are operational, you've got the team performing effectively, and there's value starting to come out of the delivery too. This next step is all about what changes, right? Because basically the whole view of this, and I've never really said this on camera about what H.U.M.A.N is. I've never intended when I put this together for this to be a replacement of Waterfall or Agile. I even think I actually mentioned this in the book. What this is about real life project management experience being written down and put into a flow that will work in any kind of situation. And I'm going to see clients, everybody works a little bit different. This is all about understanding the environment that we're in and then being able to apply this on the top to make sure we can make some positive momentum forward again with the processes that are in place. So this is keeping the cadence but changing the value. And it's about how, if anything, changes for the client. As I've said there, what changes for you? Well, number one, what I want to say is there's no change to basic cadence. It's just it's a shift in purpose and language, right? So we all probably adhere to very similar processes when we're on site. What I'm trying to do is reframe the context in how these things are applied. For example, your daily stand-ups, reshifting some of the questions that are asked in those. From a retrospective point of view, reframing some of the core detail we want to get out of that. So in short, it's about assessing what's in place and then tweaking those and adapting those to suit the H.U.M.A.N framework to address the two core problems that a lot of people find within delivery these days. Number two, ceremonies are used to check clarity, cohesion, not just completion. So what I mean by this is, the ceremonies shouldn't be there for just status updates. And I think a lot of people probably feel like this. These ceremonies are used to make sure that the team feel that they've got clarity, there's cohesion, they understand what they're actually doing to provide a successful delivery for whatever project that they're working on. Number 3, artifacts evolve. As the project evolves, they're intended to support thinking, not freeze it. We're constantly going to be reassessing what we're putting into place, understanding what is working, what is not working, what do we need to change to improve for the team. Agile always talks about feedback loops. Yet when you're in an environment like Scrum, it's often treated as a constraint. What I'm trying to say is within my framework, what we're trying to do is constantly reassess to make sure what we're doing is working for the team. Our value add. So this is about what we're bringing to the table when we start to implement these kind of deliveries. And this is where we're going back to those 3 products that I mentioned before: discovery, execution, and rescue. So project discovery, this is all about when a client has a delivery idea or a problem but is lacking the clear scope, the buy-in or technical direction to move it forward. The goal of this is to try to build that shared understanding in and around the organisation and the team before investing any effort. We want to be surfacing blockers really early and making sure that we're designing something, a solution around a real collaboration on what is actually required for the client. And what I'm highlighting there is that you can do a discovery with a core group of 3 to 4 people. I always say 3 as a minimum. You want your delivery lead, you want a business analyst, and you want a solution architect to help come up with a solution that works. And you can see at the bottom there, what I'm saying for this is, if you ever wanted support from us here at Project, we do look at fixed cost prices for actually coming in and implementing a project discovery exercise. So a little bit of a view around the actual discovery outputs as well. Rather than reading this verbatim, what I would want to say is that out of the back of a discovery, there needs to be artifacts that's given to the client so that you can take away from our engagement something that will help provide a map forward if you have a team that you already have in mind to deliver the project once the discovery is actually complete. So you want that vision canvas for the actual project itself. You want that relationship map to understand your stakeholders. You need a feasibility study as well. So like if you've selected technology solution A, but we've dug into it and we've understood that because of the constraints, that might not be the best option, we can come back to you with options and recommendations around the next steps that you need to take to push that delivery forward. You're going to need a lightweight plan. You're not going to be at the detailed level at this point, but what you do need to have is some clear milestones of actually how you will achieve it through the delivery process. But you also want to make sure that you've got subject matter experts that have been able to feed in a confidence check around the actual solution itself too. And the key one that I always talk about, and it's something that I've tried to create with this framework, is an effort and capability matrix. What that's all about is to go, if you've got 4 streams of activity within any technical delivery, and it has key specific technical requirements, playing that off alongside what actually you do have in-house and what you are considering for delivery. So, an example of this that I've used in the past is, you might want an iPhone, but you might only have Android devs. I'm not saying it's impossible, but your risks will be higher if you are implementing that Apple delivery over an Android delivery. So it's understanding that side of it too, that decisions might be made, but they'll need to be sense checked. And we're not saying no. What we're trying to do is to provide you an output to go, well, we understand what you're wanting, and this is what it potentially will mean, and here's the risk that's associated in it, and our recommendation will be X. But we'll have a plan for each. You need your RAID as well, with your initial risks that you've discovered, because they're going to be key ones going straight into delivery, and any feedback insights too. And then, depending on where you decide to go, you may want to use us for the delivery of this, but you may actually have a team in mind for this, and making sure that we've got a handoff pack so that everything's ready to go for the people that will actually be delivering the project itself. Project execution, again, the delivery of the project. This is the point where you've got a scope project and it needs delivering, and it needs to be done with speed, clarity, and stakeholder confidence. The goal for us within this section is making sure that we've got discipline and motivation at the top of our wants, and making sure that we're using regular team interaction points to avoid drift, disengagement, or hidden misalignment. And it comes back to those ceremonies and making sure that we're getting the right detail out of those ceremonies rather than just going through the motions and asking the normal questions. We're living in a different time, and we may not have sight of certain things through working patterns and working arrangements. So we need to be a little bit closer to the detail to make sure that when we are in delivery, we're not missing something, something's not slipping down the side of the sofa. And as you can see there, the core roles has grown because now we're actually into the delivery of it. When you're into project execution, you've obviously still got your outputs. There's clear outputs that's needed for any delivery. And what we're looking at here is interaction contract. So how are we as a team internally to the delivery going to interact with each other? A clarity map as well, and we can heat map certain areas of the solution so that we can kind of red, amber, green where we feel we are good, middling, or we've got a risk. The solution map itself that may grow and evolve over time, and your backlog list too of actually what we're going to try and actually deliver as part of the delivery. You've got your roadmap or your plan, and the engagement setup too around how that will work with the stakeholders around the delivery. And then you've got your dashboards, of which there are a couple that we try to implement in H.U.M.A.N, where it looks at your normal standard approaches for delivery, but also adds on some flavour of people interaction things too. Confidence reports and adaptive plans also come towards the end, and that's all around making sure, because when you tend to have stakeholders wanting to understand how delivery is going, one of the things I don't often see mentioned is actual confidence of the delivery team. And there's ways and means of being able to drive that confidence out of people so we can understand again that we're on the right track. Project Rescue. So a way to describe this is you've got a project that's off track, you've got deadlines slipping, clarity's gone, and team morale is dropping. The goal for us here at Project with this particular service is making sure we're going for rapid stabilisation of the delivery. And we need to then start focusing on rebuilding that trust around it too, clarifying the roles to make sure everybody knows what they should be doing, because in times of crisis often those lines blur. And removing any relationship blockers that frameworks ignore. Do you have members in the team that are not vibing quite right for one reason or another that needs to be addressed? And you can see that the actual rescue itself has dropped because you need a core team of people to focus on the output of what we're needing to achieve here, which is stabilisation. In this particular example, again, you don't get away with outputs in delivery. You need an alignment map. Where are we aligned and where are we not aligned, and what do we need to do to get that alignment? Issuing themes with recommendations for recovery. So if you've got 4 issues that's happening within the project, do they align to specific areas? And if so, how can we as a team get that into a better place? A simplified architecture plan too, looking at where we started and where we are, how has that drifted and why? And then maybe having a look at the decisions that have been made on the left and seeing if we need to reframe them based on what we're finding out. You'll need a recovery plan, obviously, and a team confidence assessment too. Again, like finding out why we are where we are, and that might help inform other decisions around the plan too. A delivery insight report, which is going to be needed to show again that progress forward from the point that we're at where things are on shaky ground. And then when you get towards the end here, you've got that delivery approach plan and a recommitment checkpoint. So coming back to stakeholders to show to basically show the progress improvements towards a successful delivery again. And again, I want to point out what we're trying to do with Project Rescue is offer this at a fixed price as well, just like we did with Discovery. Project is a managed service. I've gone through a little bit of the detail there around what we stand for, but how do we deliver? What I want to highlight here is we're all about being hands-on. This is all about people first in the delivery layer that supports your projects. We're going to be rolling our sleeves up and we're going to be making sure we're in there with the teams making it happen. Whether they're just getting started, already off track, this is what it's all about. But I want to call out, number one, we're not here to teach the frameworks. What we're here to do is to come in, apply them, and add value as quickly as we possibly can against a project delivery. We don't ask your team to change either. What we're asking them to do is to be open-minded as we try and bring our alignment to how they already work through small changes to things like I've said, the questions that are being asked in particular ceremonies, that reframing piece. And number 3, we don't add noise. What we're all about here is creating ownership and visible progress. So the 4 steps that I'm highlighting here is how we go about it. We embed, so we step into your delivery, assessing the current rhythm and just aligning H.U.M.A.N to fit it. We then lead with structure, and we guide the planning, stand-ups and reviews and retros, and with a focus on the clarity and the confidence, not just velocity, right? This is all about making sure it's about confidence in delivery, because with that, velocity comes. Create visibility. This is about implementing enough structure to show what matters. Real progress, team health, and delivery confidence. I'm saying that word a lot because it's really, really needed. And then reflect and adapt. We'll evolve the delivery rhythm based on what we're finding out when we're actually in the delivery. And the result? A team that delivers with clarity and connection. Ceremonies that support people, not just process. Progress that's measurable, not just performative. Rescue projects that stay on track and they're not just patched over. And no heavy training. This is about delivery. The whole point about H.U.M.A.N was not just to focus on the small projects either. When I started to think about this, I knew that I wanted something that was scalable. And here you have it. H.U.M.A.N Light and H.U.M.A.N Full Fat. So H.U.M.A.N Light is all about streamline for individual projects. You might have 2 or 3 projects that are completely disconnected, but we can come in and we can actually look at those 3 projects and we can get that alignment that's needed really, really quickly. And then you've got the Full Fat one where you're actually looking at programs and portfolios. There's more detail in the book, and I can go into more detail with anybody that is actually looking to get a bit more information about this. But up on the screen here, as you can see, the differences between the two, and that we understand that when you're dealing with a light situation, you don't want the full governance structure, you don't want all the paperwork, you don't want the same size teams. It's all about the whole point of projects, right? Tailoring. So a couple of characteristics there, and I'll run through them quickly, kind of showing the difference between the two. So from a light perspective, the scope is single projects with clear boundaries. From a full perspective, it's multiple project work streams or enterprise initiatives. From a process perspective, from a light side, essential activities and artifacts only. We don't want to drown teams in over-the-top process. From a full implementation, it's all activities with extended stakeholder management. Cadence on the light side, it's faster engagement. We want quicker time to value. Cadence on the full side is long-term value delivery and organizational transformation. Governance on light, weekly reviews, informal decision making. We don't want to be tying people up on endless steercos. We need to keep rapid delivery moving forward. But on the full side is we need formal governance and extensive coordination because of the fact that you're going to be spinning many different projects that are all interlinked. So I'll leave this up on the screen. There is more to learn. If you scan that QR code, it will take you through to our website. There's a little bit more information where you can even get in touch with us as well. I've enjoyed doing this. This is very different to what I've done in the past. And I want to do more of this. I want to bring a little bit more meat to the how. I've said it earlier. I've spoken a lot about the what. Now it starts time to talk about the how. If you watch this and if you've made it to, I'm looking here, 33 minutes, Jesus. If you've made it to this point, well done. Thoughts and prayers. And number 3, you must be interested. So if you are, what my ask would be is, come say hello. We're really open to talking to people about this and we're very, very excited. And it's great to know that there's people in the network kind of looking at this and kind of going, I want to know more. So yeah, look out for more of these. I'm hoping that I'm going to do another one very, very shortly around discovery. And yeah, hopefully I'll speak to you soon. Like I said, look forward to the DMs on this if there is any. And any feedback really on what I'm sharing. Because in the words of a famous show, I feel like now's the time to open the kimono. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I'll speak to you soon.